Yes, that's right, folks. We're doing this again. It is a little strange to do almost the same video twice in a row, but this one does have a little bit of a twist. It's funny, a lot of people that know me in real life don't really watch what I do. I think John is one of the exceptions. He and I have been co-workers for many, many years. And over that period of time, we've gotten to be good friends, and we've done some projects before and stuff. And he's a good guy and a lot of fun. So a few spooky seasons ago, I decided to make my own like creepy story. And I used this prop that I made for the channel. I think I've made at least 3 or 4 videos probably with this head. But I wanted to make one last one that was kind of just spooky. There's no talking in it or anything. It's just kind of a spooky story. So I made that just purely for fun. And when I got done with that tank, I gave it to my friend from work, John. John and I have known each other for about 15 years or so. That's how long I've worked for Regal Entertainment Group, or Regal Cinemas as it's called now. So a few weeks ago, I brought a tank in and I set it up for my boss. And he's actually in the cubicle right next to John. And John said, well, I have that zombie tank and I've always wanted just like a shrimp only tank here at work. Would you mind setting that up again? It's kind of a Halloween special. And I said, of course. So I'm on my way to work to make that happen. And that's what we're doing today. John and I talked about this. He said, don't worry about being low in supplies and stuff. Just grab whatever you can and put it together and be creative. And so that is what we're going to do today. And it should be interesting to see how it turns out. I had a little bit of fluorite dark left over from my various things. It was sitting there in the little sifting bin, so I pulled a little bit of that. I also had a little bit of fluval stratum, just a tiny little bit. So I just went and mixed those two things together. As for the other substrate I'm going to use, I've got aqua sand. Aqua sand is just a product I haven't gotten around to using yet. It's from Up Aqua. It looks like regular aquarium soil, like you might see, like the fluval stratum and all those things. But it's really hard. It's a very coarse, almost like really smooth gravel is sort of what it's like. So it should be interesting to see what planting in that is like, and kind of see how that substrate reacts over time. If you like those dark, if you like the really dark black bottoms, but you don't like the way like aqua soil and other kinds of soil things break up over time, maybe this might be something you'd be interested in. Anyway, I had a big bag of that, so I decided to use that as sort of the primary substrate and put all the rest of this stuff at the bottom so any roots that make it down there can kind of feed off the extra nutrients that it provides. Of course, I wanted to use some red clay powder, which I tend to like to do. And I had some out still from when I set up Brian's tank just a couple of weeks ago, so I threw that in. After that, it was on plants, and I actually kind of slim pickings. I've been giving a lot of plants away at like our club meetups and stuff like that. So I pulled some stuff out of the sump, and while I was in there, I noticed that I had some shrimp in there, and he wanted some shrimp, and he said he didn't care what they looked like. So just to kind of get the ball rolling, I grabbed up some shrimp. They've kind of lost their color, and that white container and stuff is kind of interesting. They had color when I put them in, but a lot of them have kind of lost their color, and it'll be interesting to see if they kind of get that back by putting them in this tank we're going to put them in today. The plants and stuff I got mainly from the sump, but I also had a quarantine bucket going, and I decided to go ahead and pull the sponge out of that. That sponge has been going all this time, and it has sort of a light bio load. So I think it'll still work. It'll be a good productive filter for this tank and a really cheap solution. But I gave him this tank. It had a sponge filter on it, so I think that this seasoned sponge filter would probably be a good replacement for that. right, all ready for the long walk into my office. Here's my setup here. I've got my camera, a couple of lights, all the substrate, microphone, defluorinator, the plants, some shrimp, a little specimen container. I just brought them like this. It's been kind of tricky. But let's get them inside. Also, a little mini review for this little wagon. This thing folds up and goes right in the trunk, and it is amazing. They're a little bit pricey, but we've used this so many times, especially making long treks in and out of conventions and stuff while Holly's setting up for doing our art shows and things like that. So yeah, I'll have a link for this in the description. You should check it out. I'm coming in on a Sunday, so there's nobody here, and that seems to be the best time to do this and not disturb anyone and be too distracting at work. So well, it looks like the skeletons are watching a movie, having some popcorn. All right, here we are over at my desk, and this is our specimen. I've cleaned it up. We'll go with a cloth, and we're gonna go and put this over on John's desk and get started. So what this aquarium is a fluval flora. It's a I think it's an 8.5 gallon tank. I can't remember the exact measurements. It had this foam in here. It came out. I reinforced it by putting a whole lot of silicone down, and this is zip tied. This is also made of foam. You get it at craft stores. I painted it up, and it's zip tied to the back of this to kind of hold it down. And this is about maybe the third time I've had this thing going as a tank. So it'll be interesting to see how it turns out this time. There'll be links below if you want to see like the original, like see how he looked before. But this is him after years and years and years of use. I was going to go back and repaint some, and see, you can see the original foam starting to come through the top. But I might leave it, especially since it's up here on the skull anyway. We're going to see what we can do to kind of give him some hair and kind of cover up some of this with plants and stuff too. So it'll be interesting to see if we can pull it off. Alright, so here's where we're going. John made a nice little spot for us right there where we can set it up. The light that I gave John to use this is this light. It's made by 7 Ports. I'm having trouble remembering the brand name of it, but it's these are really cool, efficient lights. They're not smart lights in that they're not going to kind of ramp up or ramp down. And one thing I did forget to bring is a timer. I'm just remembering now. But I'll be here tomorrow morning, so I can help out with that. But it's a neat little light. I'm going to go ahead and put it on. I want to see if I can get it installed here. Luckily, we got a little port, so I can just send that power right down here. All right, let's plug that light in. Ah, hello, old friend. All right, let's start with the substrate. And we're going to add this red clay powder. I will be putting some plants in that have some red color in them, so it'll be interesting to see if this helps. Plus, the bacteria likes to eat it. I'm just going to get it distributed around there. The next thing we'll add is this mixture here from the garage. So that's just a small amount of fluorite dark and fluval stratum, just a little bit, but enough to kind of cover the bottom in a very thin layer, far thin layer, and that layer will be a little bit more nutrient rich than it would have otherwise been. The next thing I'll be adding is the aqua sand, as it's called. This is right out of the bag, it's not rinsed or anything. As you can see, no dust whatsoever. It's very clean. right from the get-go. This is also like very coarse. Very coarse. You can't break this down even if you wanted to. Don't try to grind it down. I made that mistake. Going to give ourselves plenty to work with. All right. What's nice about this too is it actually has a zip lock, so if you don't use it all, you can zip this up and kind of keep it a little bit tighter. So when I gave this tank to John, I actually had some hardscape in it too, and I've got that still. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and play with this and see what I like. I think it'd be kind of cool if it were sort of in here like this, and this will give me something to put the Anubias against, so I can kind of snugly put them right here, and their roots will grow into here and they'll grow around this face and kind of like frame it and stuff like it's poking out of there. I held back a little bit on the substrate. I kind of went overboard on the tank next door, which by the way is doing great. Here it is now. Brian actually has a tank at home as well, so he took a few of those Anubias plants home and kind of made a little extra space to move around, which seems really cool. He also just decided to get some endlers, which he's put in there, and they're really beautiful little fish. But the tank itself is doing really good, and we're having a lot of fun looking at it here at the office. Alright, I think I'm going to start by, I got some Java moss. I have got some of this out of my tanks, but I also went to a fish swap yesterday that our club puts on. Holly and I went to this fish swap and hung out some, and I got some Java moss from a couple of people there because it looked just really nice and clean. It's always nice to see really good, clean Java moss that's already been cleaned up and is from a really nice, healthy tank. I want to use this to make some sort of male pattern baldness on this guy, along with some super glue and Cyano Accolade super glue. I'm going to attach it a little bit here. I'm going to encourage it to grow and stay right here around the edges and kind of see if this makes kind of an interesting hair-like thing. It might be more realistic over time, or it might just turn into a big mess, but in the short term at least, I think it'll be really fun to see. And we'll see how it does long term. It might even grow over the top. That would be really neat if it like turned into a haircut, but that's probably hoping for a lot. One thing to keep in mind with this stuff is use the thick version of this. It'll help a lot. Also, something to note is that it reacts with water. So as soon as I put it on here, it's going to want to start hardening because this is quite damp. So I'm going to put it on in such a way it'll be sort of wedged in, at least on one part, and just kind of hold it down for a minute. And that should be all it needs to stay. A little goes a long way. A little bit goes a long way. I'm just putting a couple of drops here and there, and I'm trying not to touch the tip of this to it. Just kind of encourage those drops to come out in a couple of places, thicker places preferably. That was a little thin right through there, but I can compensate. And put it right back here. And hopefully this will give me something that over time will grow out and look really really wild. I think I'm going to switch and put some on the skull itself, and then just kind of put that on top. See what that does. That seems to work, because that will make this a little bit faster and easier to keep that nozzle dry. And perhaps I can use less of it, which would be my preference. I'm super tempted to give him a comb over with the with the little bit I have left. Give them a little patch right at the top. This head sits a little bit tall in the tank for practicality, because what will happen is it'll evaporate down and this will be exposed. This gets exposed a lot, just like unless you're really on top of it and you're topping this thing off all the time, this will evaporate down. So I don't know if anything will really grow up on top here, so I just put it kind of at the top, but it definitely has the look here. These stem plants won't look right when you first plant them, but you kind of get them in there and they'll start growing up and getting taller, and eventually they'll look really cool. These will grow all the way up to the top of this tank and beyond. So I'm just going to put a smattering of them over here in a little clump. It'll look like a little bush at first, but eventually this will grow into quite a bit of vines and stuff. And it's got a real nice leaf texture to it too, and a real nice color. As it gets to the top, it sort of turns this reddish color. These particular stem plants too, they're really easy to maintain. Basically, you just pull them out, clip off the top of them, and replant the top of them back in there. That's really all it takes. On the other side, I've got some cryptocore, and I might actually do that over here in the corner. This is a little close to the front, but this stuff will grow taller than it will. What'll be tricky with this is getting those roots down, so let me work on these roots some. Alright, so now I've got this worked into a very lovely little plant, very organized with its roots. And we're going to stick it right here. This is a plant that very easily can take over the tank eventually. And we have another one of those. Let's get it ready. These were growing at kind of a weird angle, so I'm going to try to put it in like this, and hopefully they'll grow up towards the light and they'll naturally come up, but for short term they're going to be bent over a little bit. I have to say, this aqua sand stuff's pretty fun to plant in. It just moves right around what you want. Pull you out for a second here. So you can just put stuff in there. Of course, I haven't added water or anything to this yet, but I can just shove right into it, and stuff doesn't come out. So that's really neat. So just bury all those roots right in there. Some really pretty anubias. Just put it right front and center there. Roots all buried. Very nice. I might even bury some, like just pull the rhizome right up to the top. Just kind of put it in the corners and stuff. And never be afraid to just kind of like jam some anubias in there together. You can grow it in clumps sometimes. It'll grow right up the side of a wall too if you put it in. Encourage it to go that way. Alright, so it's a little bit past the time where I worry about the filter. So here's the filter that I pulled out. I've got some black hosing because it'll be hidden, a little bit better hidden in here. That goes back on like that, so that should be on there pretty good. I'm going to set this aside in the bag so it stays nice and wet until we get this filled up with dechlorinated water, which I think we better do next.
A couple of things to kind of arrange and move around before I call it done and finish it up all the way. This filled up really nice. It didn't shift around a whole lot, even when I occasionally accidentally we got the water flow in there. Of course, with this thing I was able to kind of go off the head, literally. And a few little last minute touches here and there, making sure everything's nice and tight and arranged after the water fill up. Got a nice little bouquet of Anubias down here at the bottom that I'll hopefully grow up. We got some crypt down in here that'll kind of come up and start to grow up and do things. If it does melt short term, sometimes it melts, and if it does short term, it's not a huge part of the aquascape. I got Anubias everywhere. That's going to look good for quite a while. And we have some stem plants here on the edge that'll grow up and look nice and pretty, have some red color to them. And that'll happen over the next few weeks. You'll start to see those grow. I think I put that one in upside down. Oh no. Planting in the substrate has been really actually pretty fun. It takes plants really well. It kind of really grabs them and lets you stick them in there. It really holds stuff well too. Like I've got some Anubias ones that I kind of jammed in there. But you don't want the whole rhizome inside, you just want a little bit. So sometimes I'll just stick like just the tip of the rhizome and the roots into the substrate and see how it holds it. And on a lot of substrates that doesn't work, but on this it really seems to work fine. Like, shoot, that holds it just fine, and that's pretty impressive. So I've got a few more little tiny pieces here, and I am moving those around. I'm going to acclimate these shrimp too. I've been adding a little bit of water from inside this tank that I've just filled up, and I'm also putting it in there so the temperature can get to where it matches or get close enough. And while they get settled in, I'll just keep putting little fragments of plants that I keep finding. I'll keep inserting them in here. All these things just kind of surviving in my sump. Some of these are really lovely little small specimens too. So it'll be cool to see if these actually grow and do well. The water's actually really nice and clear for just filling it up and stuff. So I think I'm gonna put the shrimp in here and call it done. So I actually kind of forgot a very important part where we put the filter in, and I want to put it right here where all these plants I've planted are. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to push them forward a bit. Boop. And they will make a nice screen to hide the filtration here. This, of course, has been running for a while. I've got a brand new black hose on there. These things are weighted, so it'll just kind of go right here and plop in the back. And I'm going to plop it over here a little bit next to the head there, so it's not perfectly on the corner, and kind of move these plants in around it a bit. Okay. This has got a nice little air pump and a check valve to make sure the water doesn't get back in here, so we'll get all that going. It looks really good. I can't wait till John sees it on Monday. I do have a few little shrimp running around in there. Not too many, just 3 of them. We'll see how these sump shrimp, if they color back up or not. That'll be interesting to see. And we can always add a few more too and make this a really neat, really cool desk side shrimp tank. What I love about these little Flora tanks, they don't make them anymore. You might be able to find some stuff that's a similar shape, but it's a really good size. It's a little bit bigger than the 5-gallon tanks, maybe not so big as a 10-gallon tank, but it's a really good kind of in-between size for a little small project or something, a little bit of nature to look at on your desk, or a horror film to look at on your desk. I endeavored to plant this up really well so that to make at least part of this tank like really beautiful. It'd be an interesting contrast. A lot of people here in the office have a great sense of humor, and we're all movie people. We're into seasonal stuff too. So this coming up at Halloween will probably be I'm sure it'll entertain a few people. So there you go, John. Thank you so much for being such a great friend all these years. I had a lot of fun doing this little project for you, and I hope you have a happy Halloween. And as for the rest of you, I'll be back real soon with some more videos. If you'd like to click around, I'm going to have some links up for other versions of this tank if you'd like to see kind of how this started or how I made it originally. If you like this video, click like. It really helps with the algorithm. And let me know down below in the comments if you could get away with a tank like this on your desk. Until next time, follow your bliss, keep a clean tank. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.